I really want to thank QSEN and Terry for all the great work to get this together. This is obviously a huge endeavor and extremely successful by evidence of all of you here today. I think over 200 people, and I think that's extremely impressive. So give yourselves a hand. That's pretty darn good to get here. So I do think it's exciting to see the growth of patient safety and the safety sciences in Jacksonville. And the person I have the distinct honor and privilege to talk about and introducing this award is Robert L. Weirs. And Bob was extremely unique to a lot of us. He was a mentor, a friend, a colleague, and I'm going to go through these slides with you and just kind of introduce him to you to kind of get a sense of the man and the investigator, the physician, the clinician, and just the overall citizen that he was, such that we can have a sense of the importance of the award. I truly appreciate that this award is being named after him. We at UF have cherished the opportunity to work with Bob over the years, and I think just to kind of highlight some of the things he's done, I'll go through that with you. This is Bob. And one of the things that we all remember about Bob, at least those of us who worked with him, is he always had these unique quotes at the bottom of his emails. And I always attributed them to Bob, but they really didn't go back to Bob, and he never took credit for them. They always had a name at the bottom of them who actually made the quote, but I kind of thought Bob was smarter than that person anyway, so it probably came from Bob. But it gave me, I think it gives you a sense of his personality and the fun things that he saw in life and kind of the unique way he looked at things. And I think that also goes to what made him special as somebody who is one of the true fathers of, I think, the safety sciences from the standpoint of medicine. And so one of his quotes was, "Be wiser than other people if you can, but do not let them know." So I had to look it up. I said, well, surely Bob said that because that's kind of represents Bob. But it was really Philip Stanhope, who's the 4th Earl of Chesterfield. So I'm pretty sure Bob didn't know him, but that was a good quote. So Bob was a professor of Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of Florida. His specialty was emergency medicine, but I'll go through all the other accomplishments. That's just the beginnings of his academic career. And this is another quote. He always looked at things from a simplistic view, but he saw so much deeper and saw the complexity of the issues. And this was the gold versus the lead standard. So somehow he would sometimes name things in a way that would make it, okay, I can see that it's not as important as I think. So I'm going to go through some of this with you. I don't have to read this off. He was professor of emergency medicine at the University of Florida, attended Johns Hopkins University. He did a residency in emergency medicine at the University of Florida, Jacksonville. He was one of the original residents there. Master's in computer science from UNF, visiting professor in the Clinical Safety Research Unit at Imperial College of London. He did a one-year research sabbatical focused on psychology and human factors in safety at Imperial. Then it was followed by a PhD in industrial safety. He served as senior associate editor of Annals of Emergency Medicine and on multiple editorial boards, including Human Factors and Ergonomics and Journal of Patient Safety and the International Journal of Risk and Safety in Medicine. He published an astounding over 400 manuscripts, commentaries, book chapters, and co-edited 5 books. He was funded by over $8 million in research funding. Research interests included technical work studies, resilience engineering, and patient safety as a social movement. And I think that's a nice way of saying that. His research papers and commentaries have appeared in JAMA, Annals of Emergency Medicine, Safety Science, BMJ Quality and Safety, Cognitive Technology and Work, and Applied Ergonomics and Reliability Engineering and Safety Science. So you can see he spanned the disciplines well outside of medicine, well outside of emergency medicine. And he was one who really embraced the idea of interdisciplinary work. And that's why he went over and did one of the reasons he did the PhD in industrial safety. He wanted to kind of bridge those gaps between engineering safety, other disciplines outside of medicine that were way ahead of medicine in as far as investigating how human factors work and how we reacted in safety situations. So funding agencies included the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Agency of Healthcare Research and Quality, the National Institute of General Medicine, Medical Science, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and the Army Research Laboratory. He was a true lifelong learner. This is him in Paris, and I think really to me that demonstrated Bob truly was the smartest person I'd ever met. And if I ever meet anybody smarter, I'll run and hide, because he truly was. But he was so humble that you would not know it unless you engaged him in a conversation that for more than 2 or 3 sentences, because then you knew this guy knew a lot more than most. But he was special in that way, that he was always welcoming others into a conversation such that he wanted to learn, he wanted to continually learn, and I think that was one of the things that really excited about getting this conference together last year and seeing kind of a beginning of safety science in Jacksonville at a higher level. So experience is the name given to mistakes, and I think that says something about Bob as well. So he really appreciated the experience of clinicians out in practice and understanding. A lot of people can say, well, you just should do this safer. You should be smarter. You should not make these mistakes. But Bob really, and if we just educate you more, you'll do better, right? We've all heard that. Bob was one of the first that said, that's just not the way it works clinically, right? There's a lot of variables involved, and that people don't come to work trying to make a mistake, and what are the factors impacting that? And so I think this says a lot. This is by Oscar Wilde, who was a dramatist. And then, let's see, Bob was balanced. He had obviously a tremendous academic career, but he loved to travel. He loved to be outdoors. He loved birds. He loved doing a lot of different things, but he loved his family. He was strong in faith and strong in family, and that was something I always admired about him. Despite all the academic stuff he was involved in, he would always talk about his family first and always put them first. And we're pleased to have them here today, and I'll introduce them in just a second. So as I looked through some of the obituaries on Bob after he passed, I didn't want you just to take my word for how special he was and the impact he had on our careers here. There's numerous physicians and nurses here he impacted, but nationally and internationally. So two people, I don't know either one of these persons, but they did a great job in posting in the obituary what Bob meant to them. And Emily Patterson from Columbus, Ohio says, Bob was a towering figure in his scientific field. But even more importantly, I count him personally as a very dear friend and mentor. Some people just matter more than others because of how selflessly they give of themselves. And to so many, and that was Bob without a fail. Every interaction, every time over decades, I cannot think of a single time that he ever said no to helping someone, and he was always gracious and kind in doing so. He is already deeply missed and will be so for an incredibly long time. I think that's how all of us feel. And then Donald Kamen said, the most amazing person, the most wonderful friend, the most intelligent and humble human and physician. We'll miss you, Robert. And I can tell you that's how we feel. So here are some of his quotes. I fear the man who drinks water and so remembers this morning what the rest of us said last night. He liked making beer. And that's by Benjamin Franklin. In dog beers, I've only had one. I'm going to give Bob credit for that one. because I don't know who said it, but I loved it when he posted it. I used to be indecisive, but now I'm not so sure. And that's by, I think that's by Tommy Cooper, who was a British comedian in the 1800s. So what we called Bob was the original Scog. There's a couple of them at our site, but that's the smart, cool old guy. And he was labeled this well before he was even, I would, by any standards, considered old. But it's just because he was the smart, cool guy who sat in the back of the room and always had the pearls of wisdom to give. And when he spoke, he didn't speak often, honestly, but when he did, the room hushed because those were words you wanted to hear. So this is from the posting or the announcement of his passing by our dean. A number of us helped put this together, but I think it states very clearly kind of where we at UF felt he stood. As a physician, most importantly, Dr. Weirs was known for his compassion for his patients, his passion regarding patient safety and improved patient outcomes, and his mentoring of faculty and students locally and internationally. He was a premier role model for decades of emergency physicians for his many contributions to the University of Florida College of Medicine, Jacksonville, to the profession, and to the society. Dr. Weirs will be missed. As such, I didn't know if I would make it through all this, and I'm very happy I've made it this far. Robert L. Weirs Patient Safety Award, the recipients, we had a nomination committee that we pulled together with Rose Fernandez, who's over here, Phyllis Hendry, who's sitting right there, and Shauna Perry and DJ Williams, who nominated and looked at the criteria we thought would be important. All four of these women worked closely with Bob, understood what was important from his aspects of a provider in providing safe care, and also with the passion for patient safety and quality. And so they came up with the recipient award should exhibit the highest standards of professionalism in the field of medicine, be recognized as a thought leader and innovator in the area of safety science, demonstrate a passion and commitment to safety science research, and expand safety sciences through mentorship and education. And like I said, there was a lot more to Bob. He has a great family, and the family was always his priority. This is Bob and his wife Diane. He's over here in the table. And I'm going to ask Sarah Garcia, his daughter. And while you stand, Sarah, Danny is here. Deidre, Diane, would you stand? If you guys are welcome to come up, or if you just stand and be acknowledged. And this is little Robert. You go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. It's very fitting. I feel it's very fitting to be here at a safety conference. Safety was my dad's life work. And it's also a nursing conference, which is very fitting because my dad loved nurses. In fact, he married a nurse. My mom was a nurse, and she was the most important thing in his life for almost 50 years. So it's very fitting. It feels very fitting to be here. And I'll scare you at first by saying that I could talk about my dad for hours, but I won't. He was a man of few words. That's what's often said about him. So I'll just say a few words about him. You might not know, even if you knew my dad, you might not know that he loved music, and he was a musician himself. And so when I was little, he would play guitar, and he had this one song that he played, and it was so beautiful, and it was kind of melancholy, but it had this really sweet melody. And as far as I knew, it didn't have any words because he would just play it on the guitar. And it was, as a child, it was just my dad's song. And so fast forward, I grow up, I go off to college, and in one of my classes, there was a guy, and he pulled out a guitar, and he started playing my dad's song. And I said, "What? That's my dad. My dad wrote that song." And he said, he just looked up and said, "Your dad wrote Blackbird?" I didn't know, but I tell that story for two reasons. Number one, because it's just a sweet memory of my dad, but also because it illustrates this kind of childlike awe that I had about my dad well into adulthood. And I wasn't the only one who had that sense of awe. I remember once my dad took me to a journal club meeting, and there was a group of young doctors, residents, kind of huddled nearby. And eventually they made their way over to me, and they said, "Are you Dr. Weirs's daughter?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "What's it like being Dr. Weirs's daughter?" I told my dad about it later, and he got a big kick out of it. He said, "Oh, you should have said, my dad, he levitates around the house." But I think my dad was a little bit baffled by the great Dr. Weirs thing, because he felt himself to be very approachable, and he really was, in his own very quiet way, he really was a people person. It didn't matter who you were. He always was so generous with his time and so willing to share all of his knowledge. So I know we're short on time, so I'll just finish with one last story, which is relevant to the Patient Safety Award. And the short version is my dad gave me a book that changed my life. Or you could say my dad introduced me to an idea that changed my life. I was a music major, but my dad and I talked about everything: music, philosophy, mathematics, literature. He knew everything about everything. And he had read absolutely everything. So he had a book, and he gave me the book. He said, "Hey, Sarah, I think you'd like this book." I read it, and it was a book on linguistics, and it just captivated me. I changed my major to linguistics. I transferred universities to study linguistics. I did my graduate work in linguistics. I worked for the linguistics department, and then I went on to work for the linguistics publishing division at Oxford University Press. All because my dad had this vast repertoire of knowledge and even knew about that field, and he discerned something about me, and he opened my mind to a new thing. And I think that story is unique to me as his daughter, but it's a story that was repeated over and over for many people whose lives were touched. Their lives and careers were touched by my dad. And one of those people is here today, Sandy McDonald, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Godwin to honor her.
Okay. So the nominating committee did pull together these criteria, and we looked at some national nominations as well. And what they felt like, there was one person who stood out, and Sandy McDonald is that person, and she represents a lot as far as I think what Bob was trying to achieve. The interdisciplinary collaboration that demonstrates a success as far as both in research. Sandy was involved in a number of publications with Bob and Shauna Perry, and they were also involved in a number of safety initiatives that have changed practice in our hospital at University of Florida that have been replicated at other centers. And so I thought it was very fitting when the nominating committee came back and said, "We think that Sandy McDonald is most deserving of this inaugural award." And well, see, I didn't know this when you won the award, but I think it's even more fitting that she's a JU alumnus. So, Sandy, will you please come up and say a word to your thank you. Oh, I forgot her best part. I told her, she said, "Well, I've done this and this and this, but not much more than that." And I said, she's one of the most amazing team builders and facilitators and innovators of just getting things done across different specialties that I've ever met. And so I owe her probably me not being fired multiple times to Sandy helping me get things done without throwing a big fit. So thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. I'm not like the two of them. I have to have my notes because I wouldn't be able to get through this either. So, but thank you, Sarah and Dr. Godwin, for your kind words, and to the committee. It's with a humble heart that I accept this award, given the honor of Dr. Wares, whom I've known and worked with for many years, both academically, in the ED, and in the domain of patient safety. Along with our third musketeer, who's not here today, Dr. Shauna Perry, and I know a lot of you know her. When I was in nursing school 38 years ago, okay, we were taught that nurses were personally responsible for keeping our patients safe and that we were that line in the sand. But thanks to my work with Bob and Shauna, my eyes were open to a whole new perspective of what safety and risk mitigation really look like and the importance of that human interaction for each of those to emerge. Working with this team, we were able to shed light on the fact that safety and risk were much more complex phenomena than any of us realized. Any contribution to this on my part is a result of the welcoming and the collaboration environment that existed between the three of us. We first began working in 1996 on a Med Teams project, and that was just right after that phase patient safety was coined that we started hearing about. We were part of a team that defined patient safety, and this project was the precursor to the team steps as it is today. Bob was a quiet, and if you've heard already, kind and unassuming person who was also a brilliant scholar. He was able to take the most complex of ideas and make them understandable and intriguing. But when I met James Reason and Lucian Leap, two of the biggest names in patient safety, they wanted to tell me about a different Bob that they knew, one that was full of humor and adventure. And Bob was always open to any new ideas. He loved examples. He loved stories. He liked my stories, really. And it was always a way that he thought that healthcare, it was a way of him helping to understand what healthcare should really be like. Of course, we'd only talk about hypothetical stories that would have happened in healthcare. And then one of his lines was, "You just can't make this stuff up." I think he would say that the take home from our work is that patient safety is bigger and more complex than any written policies or procedures. And it's how that we look at each of the different parts of the systems that we sometimes see how things are undermined, that clinical workers have that ability to mitigate risk and support the safety of our patients. I am glad that I was able to participate with the development of this new framework and perspective called patient safety. So in my closing, my feelings are beyond description at being given this award in Bob's name as someone who I learned so much from over the years and admired and called a friend. And thanks to all of you and to Bob, and we miss you.
And they have some information here if you're interested in the Robert Louis Wares Memorial Fund. We hope to replicate this award every year in his memory. So thank you very much.